Hello, hello. Welcome to the workshop. I'm Peter Alessandria. And for the next 90 minutes, I invite you to be bigger than you think you are. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. So let's jump in with our agenda to see what we have on the schedule for this evening. So as usual, I'm going to start with our announcements. Then we'll have an opportunity for people to introduce themselves and or share a victory from the last week or so. We'll talk about our topic after that. We'll have a short break and then we'll come back to do the assignment and question and answers. And then we'll wrap it up hopefully by about 9:30 or so. So starting with our announcements, I have a new offer code for you guys. This is for the author-signed paperback copy of the book. The discount code is BOOK20. You can enter that at checkout at bebiggertoday.com/book. And you'll get 20% off the book. And I will personally sign it too if you don't already have a copy, or if you want to buy a copy for a friend or relative. And a reminder, I'm still plugging away on the audiobook and hope to have that done by the end of the month, by September 1st. You can pre-order it now for $9.99. That's almost half off the regular price. And, excuse me, on both the book and on the audiobook and the paperback, if you don't love it, there's a money-back guarantee. You get your money back. Just let me know, and I'll be happy to refund your money. But I know you're going to love it. Also, we have merch available, T-shirts and hats. And I have a discount code for you guys on that as well. That's called MERCH20. Get it? And you can get your T-shirts and hats at bebiggertoday.com/merch. And finally, as always, I'm available for one-on-one coaching and or to consult with your small business. I'm happy to meet with your sales team, your management team, or you, if you're a creative person, and see how we can make you guys bigger than you think you are. All right? So thanks again for being here tonight. Is there anybody who is new who would like to say hello or introduce themselves or anything like that? I don't see any new faces, so it looks like it's you guys have all been here. Anybody want to share a victory that they've had this week? Anybody got good news to share with us tonight? Anyone?
Yeah, I could share something. I'm gonna not talk as much. I had some dental work done, and so my mouth's hurting. And
that sounds like Janet.
It is. Oops. I guess I should have said that. Yes, this is Janet. I had some dental work done, which is a victory. Didn't want to do it, but that wasn't the thing I was going to share. So the thing I was going to share was that I moved. And I've been in resistance around just kind of nesting in my home and kind of completing the whole project of, like decorating it and landscaping it and all that. So my victory was that we finally set up an appointment to interview and most likely hire a designer to help us, since we've been, just kind of not able to make the time and have the energy for that. So that feels prosperous and a big step. So that's what we did.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And so, Janet, just so I'm clear, this is a new home, or are you just redecorating your home?
No. One of my big visions was to move to the beach. And so we lived in the suburbs, kind of a place where the kids went to school. And once they were all out of the house, we wanted to downsize and move to the beach. And we did.
In Orange County? You're in Orange County, right?
Yeah, I'm in San Clemente.
Nice.
It's known as where Nixon used to have his place.
All right, awesome. I miss Cali, so that's great.
All right, well, you got somewhere to stay when you come in town.
I will. Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you, Janet. Anybody else? Going once? Okay, so let's jump into our discussion for this evening. So this is actually the last night that we're going to focus on topics from chapter 1. Again, the title of chapter 1 is Who Do You Think You Are? But I just wanted to review some of the concepts that we've worked on over the last few workshops, over the last few weeks, because this is so foundational to everything else that I talk about in the book. So again, it's understanding that who we think we are, how we see ourselves, determines everything. All right, and this is kind of a shift in thinking for many of us, because most of us are used to thinking about what's going on outside of us as determining how and what we experience inside of us. But it's actually kind of the opposite. Not kind of, it's actually exactly the opposite. It's what we're experiencing, how we see ourselves, how we perceive ourselves is actually what creates our external experience. Now we'll talk about, that's getting a little metaphysical, we'll get into that another time, but the idea is that this concept of becoming aware in each moment, especially in each moment that challenges us. You know, remember, if things are good, that's great, okay? But in those circumstances, in those situations where we're challenged, we want to come back to this question of, okay, wait a second, so I'm feeling a little off here, or I'm having conflict, or I'm confused, or I'm angry, there's some negative emotion that's going on. And so what we want to do is, in that moment, become aware and say, okay, how am I seeing myself in this moment? Who do I think I am in relation to this situation, in relation to these other people? Because that's actually what's driving my feelings, that's what's driving my actions, my reactions. All right, it's not what the other people are doing or not doing. It's not what the situation is presenting me with at that moment. Obviously, that's a stimulus for us to act, a stimulus even for us to react, but the nature of our reaction, the substance, the content of our actions, of our reactions, of our thoughts, of our feelings, it all comes back to how I see myself in that situation. So, as you'll see, that's actually really good news, because we often can't change the situation, but we can always change how we see ourselves. Now, a lot of people don't believe that, so we're going to talk more about why that's true in a minute. But what I want to do now is I want to play you guys an excerpt from the audiobook. This is chapter 1. And this will kind of lay it all out. This is actually right from the beginning of the chapter. And we'll go from there. Chapter 1. Who do you think you are? How you see yourself determines everything. Peter Alessandria. I'm told all good books start with a story, so here's mine. Once upon a time, I was kind of having an argument with someone. I say kind of because I'm not really a confrontational person. In fact, I hate conflict. And I became a lawyer, go figure. Anyway, at one point during our exchange, the other person stopped, put her hands on her hips, and quite dramatically said, "Who do you think you are?" While the question was meant as an insult, it stopped me in my tracks. I thought, wow, what a great question. Who do I think I am? I may have actually said those words out loud because my opponent suddenly had a very perplexed look on her face. After a few moments had passed and I still hadn't responded, she shook her head in disgust and stormed off, never to be seen nor heard from again. Yet that question has stuck with me. The end. So, who do you think you are? Even after all these years, I'm still convinced this is the most important question we can ask ourselves. Why? For this simple reason. Whoever we think we are is exactly who we'll end up being in life. This is because who we think we are informs every choice and decision we make, usually unconsciously. And it's those choices and decisions that determine how our life goes. Later in this book, we'll look at how we arrived at our current ideas about ourselves, as well as how we can change them for the better. How do you see yourself? In his groundbreaking 1960 self-help book, Psycho-Cybernetics, plastic surgeon Maxwell Maltz talked about how a large percentage of his patients, after undergoing cosmetic surgery, essentially became different people. Not only were their physical appearances changed, but over time their personalities changed as well. In some cases, the link between the surgery and the new personality was obvious. For example, many patients who had surgery to correct deformities or other stigmatizing conditions overcame their shyness. But there were also many not-so-obvious transformations, such as athletes or business people who started performing better after receiving surgery. Of even greater interest were the cases where a change in the patient's physical appearance had no effect at all on their lives. Even though these patients looked different after their surgery, they didn't feel or act differently. As a result, Maltz concluded that when a patient's personality changed, they were actually responding to a shift in their internal mental image of themselves rather than to a shift in their external appearance. While the new physical appearance could often change their mental self-image, this wasn't always the case. Unless the patient actually saw themselves differently in their own minds, nothing would change. The reason I mentioned Dr. Maltz and his patients is that another way of saying, who do you think you are, is how do you see yourself? What thoughts, beliefs, and perceptions do you hold about you? This is important because it's impossible to act in a way that's inconsistent with our internal self-image. Everything we think, feel, say, and do is grounded in how we see ourselves. This is also why it can be so difficult to change. We strive to be different in one or more areas of our lives. Yet, like Maltz's unchanged patients, because we haven't shifted our internal self-image, we remain the same. Or if we do change, that change is short-lived. The pull of our habitual manner of seeing ourselves eventually causes a return to our old ways of being. For this reason, I will be suggesting that if we want our lives to be different, we must, 1, become more conscious of how we see ourselves, and 2, deliberately choose a manner of seeing ourselves that serves us. We must create a new picture of who we are within our own minds before our lives can change. Thus, the purpose of this book is to help you get a new mental self-image without the surgery. You're welcome. All right. Oh, I say all right a lot, so I'm going to try to say all right less. Okay. So hopefully, can somebody just give me a thumbs up if the sound was okay? Because last week we had some issues with the audio. So just give me a thumbs up if, okay, good, sound was okay. All right. So a couple of things. Number one, this all started, as I mentioned in that excerpt from the book, which I think I actually spelled the word excerpt wrong too. I got to fix that. It all started like 25 years ago when I was having this argument with this woman, and she just put her hands on her hips and she said, "Who do you think you are?" And that just kind of rocked my world. It just changed everything. And that was like 25 years ago. So I've been carrying that around with me ever since. And then I read that book, Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. I probably read that back in the 80s, maybe early 90s. And it always stuck with me. And so when I was working on my book, I went back and I reread it. And the thing that really jumped out at me was that, it's not until we change our internal perception of ourselves, until we change our internal appearance, that things change. So that's my work, and that's the work I want to share with you guys. So let's go back to our topic discussion here. So as I was saying earlier, so who we think we are, everything we think, feel, say, and do is an expression of who we think we are. In every situation, with every person, under every circumstance. And when I realized that, and this leads into, now next week we're going to start talking about chapter 2, which is about taking responsibility. And then as soon as we finish chapter 2, we're going to get into chapter 3, which is true power. And that's why this foundation is so important, because until I begin to recognize that I am essentially creating my reality, I said this a couple of weeks ago, our thoughts lead to our feelings lead to our words and actions, and then our words and actions lead to the outcomes that we experience in life. And the thoughts and the beliefs that we have about ourselves are the engine that drive all of that. And so if those thoughts and beliefs about ourselves are off base, are negative, are not serving us, then the whole train unravels. So if I start with crappy thoughts, I'm going to have crappy feelings. If I have crappy feelings, I'm going to speak crappy words and take crappy actions. And if I speak crappy words and take crappy actions, I'm going to experience crappy outcomes in my life. And of course, the opposite is also true. When I have positive thoughts and beliefs about myself, when I recognize my own value and worth as a person, when I esteem myself, when I affirm myself, I have positive thoughts which lead to positive feelings, Positive words and actions, positive outcomes. All right? I said all right. Okay. So everything we think, feel, say, and do is an expression of who we think we are. Now, this is a quote from Henry Ford. Some of you know Henry Ford, the industrialist. And it sums it all up right here. He says, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you'll be right. You are calling the shots. You are creating your life. I am creating my life. You are creating your life. And it starts with our thoughts and beliefs. Now, we said maybe it was last week, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about the fact that many of us form our concept of ourselves based on our childhood experiences. And if those childhood experiences are negative, they shape our thoughts and beliefs about ourselves. And many of us grow into adulthood without ever questioning any of those negative thoughts or beliefs that we have about ourselves. Now, for me, I recognized some time ago that I'm walking around thinking I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy, I don't have what it takes, nobody's going to like me, and on and on and on. Those thoughts all came out of a series of childhood experiences that I could not comprehend, I could not assimilate, I could not navigate, I couldn't understand. We said all children are egocentric, which means we make everything that happens about us, even though nothing that happens is about us. And then we also said, kids are trusting. They believe everything that they're told. If I'm told that I'm bad or naughty or whatever, I'm going to believe that. And as a kid, as young kids, we're basically a blank slate. It's basically like an empty hard drive on a computer. And so everything that we experience gets imprinted, ingrained, written on the hard drive of our minds, and it becomes this is the problem. It becomes so familiar, it becomes so expected, so second nature, so habitual that we don't ever question it. We don't question if we're even aware of it. Sometimes it becomes so conscious, so ingrained that we're not even aware of it anymore. And actually, if it's really negative, we dissociate from it. Dissociation is a defense mechanism, basically. And, all children are born knowing that they're good and valuable. And when they're told by words or actions that that's not true, often it's so painful that they dissociate from that. And then it becomes unconscious. So it's still the belief that runs our life, but we're not conscious of it in the moment. We're not aware of it in the moment. And then 30 years go by and we keep repeating the same patterns in relationships, the same patterns with work or jobs, the same patterns with money, with our health. And it's because these programs are running that we're not even aware of. Now, again, and I say this several times in the book, I've said it before, none of what I just said is a condemnation of our parents. I'm not casting dispersion on our parents. They all did the best job they could. Parenting, I'm not even a parent, and I understand that parenting is the toughest job on the planet. I mean, it's clear to me that it's the hardest job on the planet. So if we make mistakes, if you've made a mistake, if my parents made mistakes, that's just part of the process. And so they did the best they could, and many of us still had negative experiences or negative consequences from those experiences. So our job today as adults is to begin to be aware in the moment, again, of when we're challenged, of when we have those negative feelings, when we're in a situation that challenges us, to begin to look at this question and say, okay, as I mentioned a few moments ago, I'm having some negative emotions. I know that my thoughts precede my emotions, and I know that my thoughts about myself, my beliefs about myself, are the primary thoughts that run this whole show. So how must I be seeing myself in this moment to be having this negative reaction? And then to begin to unwind that. Now, I talk about in the book, in a couple of places, that what I've done, and that has proved to be helpful for me and some of the people that I've worked with, is when I know I have a difficult situation coming up, a meeting with a client, whatever it might be for you, if you know that it's going to be challenging, then what I do is I take time in advance of that and I begin to think it through. I can role play. I've actually done this with people where I'll call somebody up and say, look, I've got a meeting at 2 o'clock with a client, a phone meeting, and this guy really pushes my buttons. Can I role play with you? Can I go through the conversation with you so I can practice? So when I'm actually in that phone call or that meeting or whatever it is, I'm prepared. I'm ready to go. I don't have to think off the cuff. I don't have to be overwhelmed when something comes at me because I prepared for it. So I've taken time in advance to change how I see myself, to change who I think I am, to role play. So when I get into that situation with that difficult person, that difficult situation, whatever it is, I'm prepared. I'm ready to go. And that can make all the difference. The other thing that I noticed for me, and again, I talk about this in the book in a few places, is I would often, in certain situations with certain people, I would often regress. And what I mean by that is I would go to feeling like a little kid. One of the things that I became aware of when I was an attorney, I was in my 30s and I had my own life, my own law practice. And my biggest fear in life was that a client was going to call me up and yell at me for doing something wrong, for making a mistake. In those moments, how I saw myself was not as an adult. How I saw myself in those moments was as a little kid. And little kids are often powerless in their relationships with the adults in their lives. They don't have the skills, they don't have the tools that they need to take care of themselves in challenging situations with challenging people. And it feeds this perception of myself as powerless. I'm not going to be able to take care of myself. This is going to be painful. Somebody's going to yell at me or tell me I did something wrong, and I'm not going to be able to protect myself. I'm going to feel bad. Emotionally, I'm going to feel bad, and there's nothing I can do about it. That sense of powerlessness, it creates all kinds of chemical reactions in the body. It creates all kinds of neural networks in the mind. And that becomes a default, a reactive place when I perceive myself in a situation with somebody who is an authority figure, somebody who has power over me. I have a whole section in chapter 7 in the book where I talk about one particular client I had when I was an attorney. And it was very difficult for me to take care of myself in that relationship. And I learned in that relationship, that's where I learned about boundaries. And and boundaries are the primary way that I take care of myself in my adult relationships. But as a kid, I didn't know anything about boundaries. And I didn't know, I didn't know how to take care of myself, so I defaulted to all the negative behavior, the acting out, the acting in, the beating myself up, the hating myself, hating the other person, magical thinking, maybe they'll get hit by a car so I don't have to deal with them anymore, instead of healthy ways to deal with challenges and conflicts in my life. So in those moments when I recognize I'm feeling like a little kid, that's a great time to stop and say, okay, wait a second. I'm not a little kid anymore. I'm an adult. I know how to take care of myself in relationships. I do know how to set boundaries. And you know what? If it gets really bad, I can just get in my car and drive away. That wasn't an option when I was 6 years old. So recognizing in the moment who I think I am, how I see myself, and as I said, if I know that there's a challenging situation that's going to be coming in the future, preparing for that in advance, it changes everything. Changes everything. When I change how I see myself, my entire experience of life changes. So we talked about previously, some of these tools that we can use to begin to change how we see ourselves, to begin to see ourselves differently. All right, I'm not going to go through all these again. I think all of you guys were on the prior meetings. If you weren't on the prior workshops, all the workshops are being recorded, so you can go back, go to my website. You've seen it. When you register, there's a link, and you can watch the videos from the prior workshops. But we did cover all of these. We talked about positive affirmations. We talked about the vision statement. I actually read my vision statement to you guys, which is in the back of the book if you have the copy of the book. I didn't talk so much about the guided visualization or the meditations, but I do talk about that in the book as well. I think that's in chapter 2 or 3. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I showed you guys one of my vision boards, and I also showed you guys my mind movie. Now, these are all tools that we can use to reprogram those unconscious, subconscious, negative thoughts and beliefs that we have about ourselves. And again, most important are those beliefs that we have that say we're not good enough, that say we don't have what it takes, that say that we're unlovable, that we're unworthy. Cynthia, I see you're there, that the thoughts and beliefs that say I'm not worth being loved. All right, so these are all the thoughts and beliefs that run us. Most of the time they're subconscious or unconscious because we've dissociated from them, because they were so painful when we were little kids. And so these are tools that we can use to begin to reprogram those subconscious thoughts and beliefs about ourselves. All right. Again, I'm not going to go into any detail on these tonight, but you go look at some of the prior workshops where I talked about this. The thing is, we got to use these tools. All right. It's not enough to wake up and say an affirmation and then go and react to life the way you've been reacting to life for the last 35 years. You know, we have to begin to incorporate all of this stuff, all these tools on a regular basis. You know, I know for me, I've become aware that I negatively affirm myself probably 100, 200, 500 times a day sometimes. So it's going to take some effort, some repetition to positively affirm myself. You know, so every morning I have a routine, I have a plan where I go through my affirmations, I go through my vision statement, I do my meditation, I watch my mind movie, you know, all this stuff on a daily basis and sometimes more than once a day to reprogram, you know, to erase the old files and imprint new files, positive, life-affirming, you know, stuff that's serving me, that's going to move me forward. The last thing I'll say about all those negative thoughts and beliefs that I have about myself is all of that stuff was made up. Again, the experiences that I had as a child were the result of the mind of a 6-year-old. And so I came to certain conclusions about myself basically through the mind of a 6-year-old, and I carried that into my adult life, and I never questioned any of those thoughts and beliefs because I thought, that's just the way I am, that's just the way it is, I'll never change, they'll never change. It's not true. Last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago, we said, every time we have a thought or belief that says, that's just the way I am, that's just the way it is, we've got to stop right there and we've got to question that. Say, is that really true? How do I know that that's true? Is it possible that I just made that up as a little kid based on the fact that something shitty was happening in my life and I didn't know how else to deal with it? All right? Oh, I said all right. So that's the work. And, you know, this is a call to waking up. This is a call to being conscious in the moment. This is a call to being aware of the thoughts and beliefs that are running our lives at every moment of the day. So I can't just kind of float through life anymore and then wonder why things are not working out. And then wonder why my relationships always end up in the toilet. Wonder why I'm always having trouble with clients or work or whatever it is, family relationships. So we have to do our part. And basically our part is being conscious, being aware, and then making a new choice in the moment. All right, now there's 6.5 more chapters in the book where I talk about that, but this is the foundation, this is the groundwork for that. All right, so I think it's about 8:35. Maybe we'll take our break now, and then let me just show the exercise that we had for today. So this is the exercise. It's often much easier to change who we think we are in a given situation than it is to change the situation itself. Agree or disagree? Why? And here's the thing, you know, for me, it was like, oh yeah, you know, it's really important to have a positive self-image. It's really important to have a good attitude about life. But then it was like, if I want my life to be better, I have to change. Then it was like, oh, well, you know, this is just the way I am. I am who I am. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, you know? And it was like, so it was becoming aware that I had this block in my head that said, you know, I can't change. I think it's important to have a positive attitude for everybody else, but not for me, because I can't change who I am, how I see myself, how I react in the moment to certain people. So it's my belief, and you guys will have to discover this for yourselves, but it's my belief that it's easier to change who I think I am in a situation than it is to change that situation. And one of the reasons, I gave an example in the book, and I think I talked about it last week or a couple of weeks ago. An example is if I get let go, let's say I get fired from a job, I get laid off from a job. I can't change that situation. That would mean changing the company's decision-making process. You know, there's a whole list of factors that go into that decision, which I have no power over. But I do have power over how I see myself in that situation. And if I get let go from a job and my first thought is, oh my God, what am I going to do? Oh my God, this sucks. Oh my God, my life is over. I'll never find another job like that. I'm too old to find a new job. I don't have the right education. You know, there'll never be another job like that. If that's my thoughts, if those are my reactions, if that's how I describe the situation, it's pretty clear that I have a negative self-image with respect to that situation. I don't have a lot of confidence that I'll be able to bounce back. I don't have a lot of confidence that I'll be able to take care of myself. As opposed to the person, when they find out they get laid off from a job, they say, woohoo, I'm free. Now I can do what I really want with my life. Those people see themselves very differently in that situation. So I'm suggesting that we can change how we see ourselves easier than we can change the situations that confront us in life, especially if other people are involved. All right, so we're going to take our break. When we come back from the break, you guys will have a chance to answer this, do the assignment or ask any questions. All right, we are back. So we're going to have an opportunity for you guys to share or ask questions. Let me just change my video. All right, that should be good. Okay, so who wants to either answer do the assignment or just make a comment or share what's going on?
Hi, Peter, it's Barbara.
Hey, Barbara.
I didn't see the assignment. I don't know, did I miss it? You gave the information about the meeting, but there wasn't anything.
I think I tried to put it in your email. So if I forgot to do that, I apologize.
Okay, so maybe you did. And that's okay, because then, you know, it's not like I didn't do it. It's your fault.
Yes, it's
Is that blaming somebody or is that owning up to?
There's the assignment, Barb. See it?
Okay. Yes.
So just you tell me, what's your reaction to that?
Oh, isn't that funny? I'm finding it very difficult this week. Remember, we talked about the picture on the refrigerator, and I noticed the first couple of days in the beginning, it was I don't want to use the word depressed, but I found it very like, oh, all my time is gone. There's, you know, here's this little kid, and here's me. I'm old, and I blew it. So how about that? So I didn't have a victory with the picture, but I love the picture and I keep on looking at it. It didn't have a victory for me, you know, but what I can say is that I'm not going to go there to the past and all poor me's and all that kind of stuff. So that's it. I'm going to have to work on that. And I am every day, you know, I kind of, if I can't change that because I don't feel like, I hate to say that I'm too old to do it now, but a lot of time has passed. So what I have to do is every day just look for the good, the blessings, the good stuff that's going on. And that helps.
Good.
And to your question, who do I think I am? How can I answer that with just saying what I said? Well, I'm a more, I don't know if I would say positive person. I have to work on getting happy. I have to work on being a happy person. I'm not very happy.
All right, so
Enough said.
true happiness is chapter 3. So you're gonna have to wait a couple of months on that unless you want to read ahead.
Okay, I'll read ahead. I will wait.
But let's come back to these thoughts and beliefs that you have that say, I'm too old, it's too late, too much time has gone by.
I am.
Well,
Time
that's
has-
just a
reality.
belief. That's just a thought.
Well, all right. Now I know we could find the stories of saying people at 67 went off and did this and that, you know, all this other kind of stuff. I understand.
See, here's what sucks about life, Barb. We
What?
have to decide. We have to choose.
Yeah.
You know, and Course in Miracles, I talk a lot about Course in Miracles in the book, but there's a lot of places where I've seen, you know, and I see how this applies in my own life. We give every situation all the meaning that it has for us. All right. And we get to choose what that meaning is. You can look at that situation and say, oh, my life has gone by me. I'm too old. I wasted all this time. Or you can say, wow, all that stuff has prepared me to be in this moment to actually make a new choice for the rest of my life. And I could live to be, you know, I could live for another 30 years. I'm going to say this to you right now, Barb. What are you going to do for the next 30 years? Are you going to lament? Right. Are you going to lament everything that you didn't do before? Or are you going to say, okay, and this is a lot about forgiveness too, which is chapter 7. You know, forgiveness, you know, and it's also not denying the feelings. I'm not saying, you know, you don't feel bad or whatever.
No, I understand. And I'll stay with, you were very good. I'm going to stay with, okay, what are you going to do for the next 30 years? I'll say that to myself. And I'll look, you know, and I'll have to find something. Say it in
a loving way, not in a, because we can say stuff like that and be beating ourselves up.
Okay.
You know, it's like, what are you going to do for the next 30 years?
Oh, that sounded kind of, yeah.
Well, I'm just saying. So,
all right.
So we give, this is so important, guys. We give everything all the meaning that it has for us, and we're always and only reacting to that meaning. We're not actually reacting to anything that's happening in the world. This is, this comes up a lot. I remember when I was a young lawyer, and I was, no, actually I was still in law school, and one of the classes I had to take was criminal law. And in criminal law, you know, it's you know, what we all are familiar with, the courtroom and all of that, and they call in witnesses. And they have this thing called hearsay, which means, you know, you can't rely on, you know, he said that she said. It has to be firsthand experience for a witness to testify in court. But beyond that, what was so interesting was all the studies which said when there were 5 people who witnessed the exact same event, they all gave different descriptions of the people involved, of the color of the car, of the time of day. You know, it's like we all perceive things from our own point of view, and it's different for all of us. So
that's interesting. Yeah. No, that's very interesting. That's it.
Whatever meaning you're giving to that situation is only true because you say it's true.
Right.
I can look at your situation, and I know it's easy for me, but I can look at your situation and say, gee, or, you know, let's imagine I was 20 years older than you. And I look at your situation, I say, gee, I wish I knew I wish I knew then what she knows now.
Okay. That's a good analogy. Okay.
See what I'm saying? But
Yes, I do.
here's the rub with all of this. This means I have to take responsibility for my own happiness. I have to take responsibility for my life. I have to take responsibility for my feelings. And I don't want to be responsible for my life. I'd rather just blame everybody else for what's not going right in my life.
Okay. I got to do some action here. Okay.
Well, you know what it is? I think, I mean, you decide for yourself, but I think a good place to start would be to forgive yourself for your past choices. I think we all have to come to that point in our lives where we either are going to forgive ourselves or just continue to hate ourselves for all the mistakes we've made, all the time we've squandered, all the relationships we've screwed up. You know, there's no way forward from that if I'm still going to make myself wrong for any of that, you know, and forgiveness is not easy. That's why the last 70 pages of the book are devoted to forgiveness. It's by far the longest chapter in the book. But it's the most important as far as I'm concerned, because all of this other stuff won't be worth anything if I'm still hating myself for my imperfections, you know, for my mistakes, for, you know, all the things that I've done that I could crucify myself for.
Yeah, I remember somebody saying that, you know, the baggage, you know, just keeping it there, like it's not helpful.
That's why I have to decide how much I love myself. And that's why looking at that photo of myself as a little kid, you know, was such a game changer for me, because it took me back. And then I had to see, I didn't really, you know, this is another thing. Now, again, I'm not a parent, so it's going to be really easy for me to say this, or maybe not. But I recognize that parents, it's very easy to have a love-hate relationship with your children. You know, we love them more than anything in the world, and there are times we just want to kill them. And what I found that for me, that was true of my relationship with little Peter, with my inner child. Oh, darn it, I had a slide for you guys. Let me see if I could get it on here. I talked last week. So if you weren't here last week, I talked about this inner child work, which is where we take a photo of ourselves as a little kid and we go into a meditation and build a relationship with that child, reconnect with our inner child. And a photo is a great way to do that. And the books that were instrumental for me were the books written by John Bradshaw. There were 3 books that I recommended, and I was going to put a slide on here, which I forgot, but I think I can pull it up on my computer. Actually, let me see if I can do it real quick here.
Right, I don't think I put them down.
The 3 books that he wrote that I recommend for people. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, Peter. Yes, I can see the book. Thanks.
So those are the books that I recommend. You know, you can get a paperback on Amazon for $6. You know, they're not expensive, but these are the books that really were helpful for me when I started this journey, you know, 25 years ago, to rebuild that relationship with myself. And of course, the inner child is a metaphor, but it's not a metaphor. You know, we all have that little kid that still is alive in us that just wants to know that we care, that he's safe, that she's safe, that they're loved, that they're valuable, that they're worthy. So I spent a lot of time when I started, this was right around when I started my recovery for codependency, rebuilding that relationship. So these are great books. John Bradshaw, you can get them on Amazon or go to his website. And he used to be on PBS a lot. He had specials on PBS. And he was also a recovery guy, codependency and all that. So let me see if I can stop sharing this. All right, so Barbara, anything else? I'll send you the names of those books if you want them.
Okay. No, I wrote them down. No, nothing else. Jennifer, my darling daughter, just get in touch with me, and you know, all is good. All is good. And that's really, you know, that's forward thinking for me to say all is good, because I never used to say that. Everything was always bad and horrible. So all is good, and I just have to work on making it wonderful.
And here's the thing. It's like I recognized, again, recently with this whole pandemic thing,
Yeah.
that, you know, nothing in my life looks the way I think it's supposed to for me to be happy.
Yeah, going through that. Okay.
Nothing matches my inner picture, and yet, you know what? I can be happy in this moment, and I'm okay. Nothing in my picture of how things are supposed to be says I can be okay right now, and I notice that I'm okay right now.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yes, I do. I do have that every day. I do. And that's really something, much better than I used to have. So
There you
I'm
go. So
doing good.
acknowledge that, and then just think, okay, what am I going to do for the next 30 years?
Right. Instead of saying one day at a time, now it's what am I going to do for the next 30 years? Wow, what a change. Okay, I'll do that. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Barbara. Who else? Who's next?
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Barbara. I went to get my cup. My cup, oh, I don't know if you can see it. My cup has a picture of me on it.
I see it.
And I put shamrocks on it too, because I found out that day that I had an ancestor that was a famous Irish pirate, female pirate. But on the back of the cup is the most important thing, and it says, "Note to self, you are not too old and it's not too late." That's the part that faces me. You are not too old and it's not too late. Now,
Love it. Love it.
I love it. Thank you.
Isn't that fabulous? It's from Shutterfly. Shutterfly.
Now we know what Barbara's getting for Christmas.
It's wonderful. So when I was 51, I was very old. I was very old. And life wasn't worth going on. And at that time, I had a miraculous occurrence where I was willing to change one thing for one meal. And I did that. I stopped eating grains and sugar for one meal. That was the only meal I was committing to do that for, but I changed it for one meal. And that was the beginning 22 years ago now, because I was 51 at the end of my life, and now I'm 73. I mean, and it's the beginning of life. Every day is a new day. And I think I mentioned last time that I had my cataract removed in this eye. And so part of the world is bright colors, and the other part of the world is still sort of smoggy, brownish yellow, yucky. And Tuesday, I'll have the other eye done. So I'll be back to clear vision. And clear vision can make such a difference. I can't believe how different it is in my mood just in the matter of a couple of weeks, because my vision is different. So when you're talking about this metaphysical one, that is the same thing as my physical one. But I have more control over it. I have more choice over it, the metaphysical, than I do over the physical. So I'm going to enjoy this new vision and enjoy your thing about change who I think I am. I don't have to continue to believe the things that I believed as a 3.5-year-old. And that's really where my beliefs came from, 3.5 years old, so that's a long way to carry old baggage. So 70 years later, hey, it's time. It's time. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. That's beautiful. I love it. And again, I recognize for me that, 25 years ago, I wasn't ready to do any of this stuff. And 25 years ago, I still had to learn some things the hard way. So everything that I've been doing since is preparing me for this moment to enjoy the rest of my life, and I love the metaphor, Cynthia, the idea of, sight is a perceptual process. So seeing the world differently, when I see myself differently, I see the world differently. You're literally seeing the world through new eyes, and hopefully you'll turn that gaze on yourself and see yourself through new eyes. Seeing myself, and here's a prayer not really secular prayer, but, you know, God, help me see myself the way you see me. Help me be who you created me to be. It's like, if I saw myself the way God sees me, my whole life would be different. That's what I'm working towards. Beautiful, Cynthia. Thank you.
Me too. Thank you.
Who else? Michelle, you have anything?
I'll share it. I'll share it. Hi, I'm Helena. I was so inspired. Sorry, I
Hi,
jumped.
Helena.
Oh my God, I really loved share, especially thank you, Cindy. That was really, I mean, you don't look your age at all. You look incredibly young. I was kind of shocked. I don't know if you're the same Cindy that I knew from LA. I have no idea. But anyway, thank you so much for sharing. I just really appreciate this workshop because I'm actually attending several of these because I'm so far away in Seoul. And you know, it was really interesting because this morning I woke up early because I was intending on attending some other stuff by Zoom. So I woke up at 6:30, which is, I mean, I woke up actually 6 a.m. But anyway, so I attended this thing, and then I started reading a book. And this book that I'm right now reading is, you know, about the change of the whole world, you know, with the internet and everything. And then I started to kind of writing down some of the list from the book, you know, the words like, you know, which I had forgotten because I gone through like neurological injury, and oh my God, it just took forever to recover. And I'm very grateful I got my health back. But I mean, I have to say that I'm still kind of sometimes haunted by, you know, just the memory of losses that I've gone through, because I've gone through a lot of losses. I've lost my health, and then, you know, lost to my father, lost to my dog, lost people, like, you know, on and on and on. And but good thing is right now I'm getting ton of support, you know, like either professionally, also from the support group, like, you know, also I can come to this, you know, amazing meeting, I mean the workshop from Peter. So I just really can complain. Life is really, you know, taking me into like a new place. And I also really can agree with like working with your inner child. And I feel that I do a better job with my inner child than in the past. But at the same time, maybe I want Peter's feedback. I'm having like two areas of my life where I'm having a hard time. Well, actually, one of them I just heard that, you know, your story about your book, 70 pages, over 70 pages are about self-forgiveness. And because, you know, before my injury happened, I used to have a really good job, so I was making good money. But I used to also reject a lot of people. I used to push people away all the time. And this, you know, these things really haunt me, you know, because I can't go back to the past. You know, it is what it is. It already happened. I can't figure out why I did it. Maybe I can go back to my therapy and try to figure out why I pushed all these people away. I pushed, you know, my career opportunity away. I pushed, you know, friendship away. I pushed like even, you know, wonderful men away. So that's kind of part of the story I have, you know, today. And then the second thing is basically, it's really hard, you know, like when you go through such a health challenges and, you know, took really long time to recover. It's almost like all your mental blueprint of your career history has been wiped out. So for me, it's like, I'm sitting here thinking like, what do I do next? You know? Anyway, that's it.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Helena. I'm so glad you're here. You know, there's two things that come to mind. The first is to acknowledge when we have feelings of sadness, when we have feelings of loss, when we have feelings of grief. You know, those are natural emotions. They help us transition. You know, sadness is a natural, grief is a natural reaction to the loss of something. What's not natural is when we beat ourselves up for that loss. You know, that's not natural. It's not natural for us to hate ourselves, in my opinion.
Mm.
So, and whenever I'm not being loving towards myself, that's hating myself.
Mm.
So you want to think about that. And then it's also, you know, you can think about, well, actually another thing. So you can think about why you push those people away, but you could also spend your time thinking about the people that you want to attract in the
Oh.
future.
Mm.
You can either spend your time figuring out your past, or you can spend your time planning your future.
All right.
Now, it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. And the thing that I say in the book over and over again is there's no such thing as a mistake. There's no such thing as a failure. There's no such thing as a bad choice or a wrong decision if we're willing to do two things. So the first thing is to learn from our mistakes. All right. So if, you know, obviously if something doesn't work out, if there's a negative reaction or consequence, we want to understand how we contributed to that. But the second, and what we can learn from that going forward. But the second part is, so we learn from our mistakes and then we forgive ourselves for them. Because it's the self-recrimination that keeps us stuck in the past. It's the self-hatred. For me, you know, I talk about this in chapter 4 in the book, and I've mentioned it previously. When I started doing cold calls for my photography business, you know, I was terrified. It was comical. My hands would shake and I was sweating, you know, and thank God they weren't video calls. Thank God they were on the phone. And what I found was the anxiety that I was feeling, the fear that was manifesting in my body before and during every call was not because of the other people. It wasn't because they were rejecting me. It wasn't because they were mean to me. In 2 years of cold calling, I never got hung up on once. And more than I can remember, people were very nice. It's like, you know, they didn't need my services, but they gave me the names of their friends to call. People were so nice to me.
So is that means that more negative things were being created by our own head? Is that what you're trying to say?
So it wasn't their rejection that I was afraid of. It was my own rejection. Because after every, and during and after every phone call, I would beat myself up. Why did you say that? You sound so stupid. Nobody's going to want to hire you. Your photos suck. You know, all this negative, you know, I would beat myself. Even if the call went well, I would find a way to make myself wrong. And it's the making myself wrong that was creating all the fear and the anxiety.
Oh, okay.
It was the self-recrimination. It wasn't other people's recrimination because nobody else was recriminating against me. And yet I was still going through this whole thing. So it was my own rejection of myself that was creating all the fear and the anxiety that I was experiencing.
So then can I ask you something? Where do we get that from? Where are the sources of, is it all come from childhood? Our own rejection project?
You know, I think in my case, I look back at my experiences as a kid with my parents, and I think that's where it comes from. But I'm not a psychologist, you know. But I think the more important question, Helena, is not where does it come from, but where am I going with this?
Okay.
You know, and see if there's a way to transform that. See if there's a way, you know, all the self-recrimination for all the mistakes that we've made in the past. This is what I was saying before. You can either figure out why you did what you did way back when, or you can take all that time and energy and say, this is what I want to create in the future. This is where I want to go with my life. And you know what? I'm probably really going to have to work on my relationship with myself first, because it's those feelings of unworthiness, it's those feelings of not good enough, it's those feelings that, and it's the thoughts behind those feelings that keep us from having successful businesses, that keep us from having successful romantic relationships, you know, that create all kinds of problems in our lives. So I have spent more time, probably at least as much, if not more time, working on my relationship with myself as I have with things like, you know, submitting my photos for shows and exhibitions and submitting them for publication, or, you know, winning awards and doing all of that stuff. So I realized that it was my relationship with myself that really needed my attention first.
Okay.
That's why I have on my phone, I don't know if you could see these. I have pictures of myself when I was a little kid. Here's one. That's me and my brother
Okay.
when I was, I don't know, I was probably about 6 or 7. And I talk to that kid and I tell him how grateful I am that that was me. And I tell him how much I love him and how much I care about him and how important he is to me. All the things that I wanted to hear that I never heard when I was a kid. I have been spending, so I got involved with Codependence Anonymous back in the late 90s. And I realized I could qualify. If there was a 12-step program for approval addicts, I was an approval addict. I would do anything to have somebody tell me that I was okay.
Yeah, I can relate.
And that created so much unmanageability in my life because there were people who were telling me I was okay and I wouldn't believe it. It was never enough to hear it from somebody else. It wasn't until I started telling myself that I was okay. And then I didn't have to try so hard. You know, I had a job, so I worked as an attorney for a law firm, and then I went in-house with a film and TV production company. It was a small production company. They were making little, like, direct-to-video movies, feature film, not features, but videos. And they had a TV series they were doing. It was a small company, and I was working for the boss. And he reminded me a lot of my mother. That's another story. But one day I did this report for him, and I created this whole, on sales for the different film properties and TV properties that we owned. And I had charts and graphs, and it was all in color, and I did this whole thing, and I was so proud of it, and I was trying so hard for him to approve of me. And I gave him this report, and he just was like, "You wasted all the color ink in the copier for this?" It was like, and what I realized was he never asked for that. I was just trying to get his approval. I was just trying to get somebody to tell me I was okay. And you know what? It wasn't his job to tell me that I was okay. It was my job to do my job, which was to do what he told me to do. And so it was but here's the thing. So what's running my life, which I'm not even aware of, which is in the subconscious mind, is this thought behind the thought, which is, I'm not okay. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. I'm not worth being loved. So I have to try extra hard to get people to like me. I have to try extra hard to get approval. Another thing I did was I made a movie. I made a short film. It was about a 45-minute film. It took me 6 months. I busted my ass on this film. And it was great. And I had a good time doing it. And the actors were great. And it turned out really well. And I had a screening. And like 200 people showed up for the screening. And at the end of the screening, everybody stood up and they applauded. I got a standing ovation. The people loved the movie. And then they left. And I was sitting there and I was like, oh, that's it?
Yeah.
All that work and they loved it, and I still don't feel good about myself. It was like I was looking for other people to tell me that I was good enough, that I was okay. And that created unmanageability in my life. So the hardest thing in the world is for me to tell myself and really believe it when I say I'm okay.
Oh, okay. I get that. It's like a building a relationship within yourself, like with core of yourself, and create it from internal, like from inside rather than like from the outside. I get that. Okay. Very, very nice. Really wonderful. Thank you.
And for me, unconditional love, this is in chapter 4. Unconditional love is being willing to love myself when I least like who I'm being. It's easy to love myself when I'm doing all that great stuff that I think I'm supposed to be doing in the world. you know, when I'm performing, when I'm showing up, when I'm doing all the things I think I'm supposed to do. But can I love myself on the days when I can't get off the couch?
Mm.
Can I love myself? Can I be nice to myself? Can I talk to myself in a nice way when I don't do any of the things I'm supposed to do?
Mm.
When I regress into some old, you know, reactive behavior, when I'm, you know, when I'm judgmental, when I'm, you know, when I want to act out on an addiction or something like that, can I still love myself?
Mm.
And that's where the work has been for me, to love myself when I least like who I'm being.
That's
And then
beautiful. Thank you.
forgive myself when I can't love myself when I least like who I'm being.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, it's really, I mean, wonderful feedback. I'm also in codependent recovery as well, too. But what I can clearly now understand is that, you know, before I had this injury and when I was earning six-figure salary, working in a good labels with fashion, all the career built was really purely based on codependency, codependent symptom of trying to get approved. That's why I never felt that, what do you call it? I never felt like keeping the career. I never felt like keeping the position. I never felt like, you know, staying on it. You know, I use that as a more of a conquest, you know, to get there so that I get to be heard from people I know that you're wonderful. And then once I hear that, I don't need that anymore, you know? So you really helped me to find out,
Yeah, and
clarify my problem.
it runs our lives, and we're not even aware that that's what's running our lives. And
Oh my God.
it's never enough when somebody else is telling us that we're good or valuable or worthy or whatever. It's never enough if we don't believe it. And when we
Oh,
do believe it, when
huh?
I do believe it, now it's like I don't give a shit what people think about my photos.
Yeah.
You know, I don't. I do it for me. And if people love it, that's great. If they don't love it, that's great.
That's beautiful.
I don't have to hang my self-worth on that anymore.
That's beautiful. Thank you. I mean, that's really, I mean, it's the best I ever heard. It's really amazing. Thank you. That's really
And you know
wonderful.
what? I also had to forgive myself for all the codependency and all the approval seeking and all the stuff I did. Because it was very easy then, when I realized that, it was like, oh, it was very easy to beat myself up for that, you know? And you know
Exactly.
what? As far as I can tell, Helena, you know, take what you like and leave the rest. The whole world is codependent. You know,
Yes, I know.
we're all looking for somebody to tell us we're okay. We're all looking for somebody to make it all right. We're all looking for somebody to save us.
Uh-huh.
Save me, just save me. Tell me I'm okay. Love me because I can't love myself.
I mean, I think it just, I mean, I know the concept now of like just spending more time with higher power and myself. And I totally have that in my life with so much peace. But I think what you just have explained really made this amazing connection to this next junction where, you know, I have to start to do things for myself, you know, not for others who's going to say, oh, you did it really well. You know what I mean? So this is really good. Very, very good. Thank you.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Great.
Really like it. I'm
Thank
gonna
you,
check out
Helena.
the part. I'm gonna check out the part on your book about the forgiveness, you know?
It's all
Sounds
in there.
really good. Yeah, thank you.
All right, who else? We got a few more minutes. I want to hear from somebody else.
Hi, Peter. It's Michelle.
Michelle, how are
Yeah.
you?
Okay. I think being more confident and believing in myself and not doubting myself. An example is today I met an individual to be a client for home health aid. Me being him being a client of mine, and I'm like, I think it's doing the daily activities with him, trying to come up with a plan, not knowing the person, and starting from scratch, like with somebody new, and just not really having much help around me with, you know, another person being there. It's doing this all on my own, you know? So
So we
that's
talked
sort of
about
scary.
confidence. We talked about confidence in the
You know.
past. So confidence is a belief in myself, but it's also another definition I looked up many years ago. I think I shared this with you guys. Many years ago, I looked up, and when I was actually just getting into recovery for codependency, I went to the dictionary and looked up the definition of the word confidence. And in addition to self-assurance and belief in myself and all that, there was another definition that really jumped out at me. And it was for a confidence. And a confidence is a trusting relationship. And so for me now, I see self-confidence as a trusting relationship with myself. Now, what does that mean? Well, can I trust myself to be nice to myself if I make a mistake? Can I trust myself to not beat myself up if I do something wrong? Because remember, it's the self-recrimination that really is the problem. You know, other people may not be happy with what I'm doing, but it doesn't have to destroy me. You know, it doesn't have to rob me of my self-esteem. But my recrimination of myself does exactly that. It robs me of my self-esteem, and it creates fear. Now, if you're just starting out on something new like you are, you know, it's okay to ask for help. If it's possible, you know, to ask for help or have somebody you can at least check in with on a regular basis and say, gee, you know, I don't know how to handle this, or what do you think about that? Asking people for help. And then the other thing is going into any relationship, I recognize now that it's my job to take care of myself going into that relationship, which means I have to know exactly what I'm committing to, you know, what my obligations are, what I'm promising the other person I'm going to do for them, how much time it's going to take, how much I'm going to get paid for that. And I have to make sure that all of that works for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I don't take care of myself going into the situation, then I'm going to feel resentful later. And what I have found for me, this is chapter 6, I think, 5 or 6, resentment means only one thing. Resentment means I have not done what I needed to do to take care of myself, and now I'm blaming somebody else for that. And the anger that I think I feel towards them is really misdirected anger that I feel towards myself.
That makes sense.
So going into this new situation, number one, make sure it's going to work for you. You know, what you need to do. And here's the other thing. It's like when I take care of myself, then I can do my best work for my clients. If I've gone into that situation and I'm not clear about what my obligations are, if I'm not clear about whatever, and if I have, you know, negative feelings or whatever, and I haven't, then I can't do my best job for that client. So it's in their interest for me to make sure that I'm clear going in. And then the last thing is, you know, you're starting out on something new, so you want to be kind to yourself. Because you may make some mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay with you if you screw this one up?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, obviously, you know, if there's somebody who you don't want to have a negative impact on the person that you're helping, but it's also, how do you see yourself in that situation? You know, can you find a place to say, you know what, I obviously don't have a lot of experience, but I can learn. I want to do a really good job. I can trust myself to be nice to myself if I make a mistake. I can ask for help if I need it. I can set boundaries and say, you know, I'm not really comfortable doing this because I don't have enough experience to do that, but I can do this instead. Does that work for you? You know,
Gotcha.
that's called negotiation. See, adults negotiate. Kids yell and scream and fight and beat each other up.
Hmm.
You know, so negotiate. You know, find out what the other thing is managing expectations. Find out what their expectations are for you and make sure that you can meet those expectations.
Mm-hmm.
You know, something that I've had to learn the hard way, both as a lawyer and a photographer, was managing my clients' expectations. Because if they expected something that was different than what I was able or prepared or willing to do for them, created a lot of problems. So I had to be really clear going into a situation, into a relationship, a working relationship. You know, what are they expecting from me? And can I do that? Do I want to do that?
Okay. Thanks.
So great affirmation, Michelle, for you is I got this. I can
Okay.
handle this. I'll figure this out. I'm going to be nice to myself no matter how it goes. Just have those positive thoughts going in your head, and then everything kind of falls into place around that.
It's just occupying the time for a whole day of figuring out the activities for a whole day and not being like in the same repetition of each time I go there that day on a certain day of the week that we're going to be doing the same activity. You know what I'm saying? So that person doesn't get bored, you know, being that
Look,
person is limited in what they can do and how
they
far
just
they can go.
they may
You
just be
know?
thrilled to have you there.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you don't know. That's why I'm saying find out what their
Yeah.
expectations are.
Okay.
Some people, some people love to do the same thing every day.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know,
Sounds
you'll
good.
figure it out. You'll figure it. All you have to do is believe that you'll figure it out, that you'll be okay. You can handle it. You're going to do a great job. And if you
Mhm.
don't do it perfectly, you're going to forgive yourself.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. Couple more minutes. Anybody else?
Hi, Peter. Can I be heard?
Is that Linda?
Yes, it is. Linda in Chicago.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to thank everyone for sharing. I resonated with pretty much everyone, but I think I want to give a special mention to Miss Barbara because I have been absolutely in that same place, and it felt very soothing to me that I'm not the only one saying, okay, that's it. I'm done, you know, and it's curious how we can do a number on ourselves that way. So thank you for, I mean, I'll be watching that and I'll be applying what I heard, but I think it's like one day at a time, or sometimes one breath at a time.
Or the next 30 years at a time. Something like that. Thank you.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, I think I had a very emotional week. It was my late father's birthday, and it's a curious coincidence of life. And actually, in Chicago, we're still having these problems with the downtown area, and basically the downtown area is closed. But anyway, to the story, I ended up returning, standing in front of the house where my father was born on his birthday. And again, all we needed was like a gentle rainfall and, music in the background. But what this workshop brought to me for that is I imagined him as a child. Oops, here comes the emotion. And that, here's this little boy who was brought into the world here on this day, almost a century ago, and he did his best, And so it was just a different perspective. And I think me doing this work of self-awareness, excuse me, and, looking at the losses of my life and where it's brought me now. And so I was able to thank him for what he tried to do, and also for me to continue the legacy of that work, of that lineage. So, and all of you in some way have contributed to that moment for me, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Linda. That's beautiful. Thank you for that. The inner child process that I described, actually, I hadn't done that in many years. And when I was working on, I think it was the final draft of the book, I had a situation with a family member that was very difficult, very challenging for me. And it just kind of came to me spontaneously to, instead of doing the process with myself, I got a photo of that person and I did a forgiveness process with that by remembering this person is an adult now, but looking at that photo and remembering that person when they were a child, and exactly what you just said, you know, they did the best that they could, and that little child is still within all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I used that inner child process as a forgiveness process, which I mentioned in chapter 7. I call it photographic memory, where if there's somebody in our life that we want to forgive, it's often very difficult to do that when there's an adult who is acting negatively in some way.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to have a chance to forgive with that person, get a photo of that person as a young child and then have the interaction with the child.
Oh,
And in my
nice.
case,
Yeah.
I even asked the child in the photo why the adult was acting the way they were acting in that situation. And the answer that came back to me, it just changed my whole perspective on the whole thing. And I was able to let it go. I was able to forgive the adult. It was like, oh, I see. Now I get why this person acted that way.
Oh, very nice. Well, thank you. I'm going to try that this week. I have a situation of forgiveness that is just being so stubborn. And I was advised, okay, well, because I just said, I can't forgive this wrong. And they said, okay, well, then pray for the willingness to forgive. And I said, nope, don't even want. So then they got me with, okay, pray for the willingness to be willing to forgive. You know? So that's where I am with that. But thank you. I'll give that a try.
Well, yeah, if you knew that person and you have access to photos of them as a kid, but even if it's, you know, some people, especially right now, there are some people who have a lot of problems with certain politicians.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can go download a photo of that person as a child and try and work on the forgiveness that way, you know, because it's often difficult. Now, forgiveness is a very complicated thing, and we're going to spend at least 2 months talking about it. All right. And in some cases, it may not actually be a good idea to forgive because we may be setting ourselves up for more harm. We may be setting ourselves up for injury. So I'm not saying we always have to forgive everybody in every situation, but I think more often than not, certainly in my own life, in my own situations, forgiveness has always been the answer, you know, when it's safe and appropriate to do that. But I have to, here's the thing, I have to change how I see myself in that relationship to forgive somebody. If I still see myself as less than, as threatened, as vulnerable, as a victim, I haven't used the V word in the last few workshops, but we're going to talk a lot about what it means to see ourselves, perceive ourselves, who we think we are as a victim. Mm-hmm. That will keep us stuck in so many unhealthy situations with so many unhealthy people, and it's impossible to forgive if I still see myself as a victim. Now, I know you know, and a lot of us know that part of the 12-step work is when we do step 4 and 5 and then step 9, we look at our part in all those situations that challenge us. And so when I look at my part, right then and there, I start to undo this idea that I'm a victim because I have some responsibility, not all the responsibility, but I have some responsibility for what's going on. And as I begin to change how I see myself, I stop giving my power away. And when I stop giving my power away, I can really consider this idea of forgiveness if it's appropriate to do that.
Yeah.
Again, for me, it was really helpful to use this inner child process to do that,
Mm-hmm.
especially in that one situation.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. I mean, with forgiveness, it just reminds me that, and again, because lip service that, yeah, it's good for yourself. It's better for you to forgive. And it sometimes is difficult for me to, I can say it intellectually, but I don't feel it in my heart. And so there's a process to get to that point that it goes. It's like, I imagine an elevator from my head to my heart, you know, so it's like stuck in my head. And I can intellectually think, okay, yes, forgiveness will help me. I had a realization, though, that if one is in an angry relationship, it's a toxic relationship, but it's still a relationship. So that stubbornness not to forgive is a toxicity in one's life. It's a cancer in one's life. So really taking one's power back and to say the best place is to be neutral, you know, and say, okay, I don't condone, forgiveness does not condone the act that, you know, caused this strife between us. But I, you know, I release you, you know, I release you from the rent in my, the free rent you're occupying in my head. Right? So just say, like, if I could just let it go. And, but again, it's a process. So, oh,
Well,
Lord
you
have
have
mercy.
the book, right?
Yeah,
You
I
got the
do.
book.
Yes.
It's chapter 7, so
Chapter 7.
it's all in there. Now, here's the thing. We don't, you know, again, I want to be very clear about this. Forgiveness does not mean that we become a doormat. It doesn't mean that
Right.
we stop taking care of ourselves. It doesn't mean, see, I can't actually forgive somebody if I'm still a victim, if I'm still not taking care of myself, if I'm still giving my power away. Then it's just lip service.
Mm-hmm.
But this is why in chapter 7, I also talk about boundaries. And boundaries are the primary way that we take care of ourselves in our relationships with other people. So it's when I begin to take responsibility for my part in the relationship, and that responsibility is primarily to take care of myself. When I finally start taking care of myself, then I can really forgive the other person.
Yeah.
Until then, it almost doesn't make sense to forgive them. Because as I said earlier, I may be setting myself up for more harm.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not condoning somebody else's bad behavior.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes the solution is to leave the relationship. Sometimes the solution is to divorce ourselves, literally, from that situation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but this is a whole other discussion. We're going to spend
Mhm.
weeks on this subject. So,
Yeah. Well, looking forward to it. Thank you, Peter.
thank you, Linda. Great to hear from you. All right, we're going to wrap it up unless somebody else wants to say something.
Wait,
I'm gonna
Peter,
put-
okay, it doesn't have to be today, but before I forget, I just wanted to mention, Helena, here, that, you know, when you had this like career transition, that you were attorney, that's when I knew you. And then, you had this vision of moving to East Coast, and then you became what you wanted. And when you were going through the transition, my question, the curiosity I have is like, how are you able to transition that with your financial burden? Like, you know what I'm saying? Because if you were paying certain amount of money, forget you pay a certain amount of money from this career A, going towards the career B, it takes time. And how?
It was actually very difficult. The only reason I was able to do it was because I had a lot of money saved.
Okay.
So I saved money from when I was a lawyer, and that's what enabled me. It carried me for almost 3 years, quite honestly.
Okay.
I would have never been able to do that, not solvently at least. I mean, I may have borrowed money or something like that, but that was part of the challenge. But that actually, see, it was a double-edged sword. Having that money in the bank meant that I didn't have to work as hard to get business, to get the new career going. It wasn't until that money started to run out that I was like, oh shit, I really have to do something now.
Okay.
So it was a double-edged sword. Now, you probably know Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins always says it's not resources. It's not resources. It's not how much money you have in the bank.
Okay.
It's how resourceful you are.
Okay.
So when I began to run out of money, when the resources started running out, I had to start being resourceful.
Okay.
I had to start getting into action. I had to start figuring it out. I had to start making it work.
Okay.
But
I feel,
and that's when I bumped up against all the negative thoughts and beliefs. See, I didn't
right.
know that that's what was holding me back. I thought it was the economy, or I thought it was other photographers out there. I had all these reasons why my business wasn't working.
Right.
And then one day I realized, oh, wait a second. It's not about any of that. It's about this.
Right.
Then I realized that's actually good news because I can't change any of that.
Mm-hmm.
This, I can't change how many other photographers there are out there. I can't change the economy. But I can change this. This is why this question, all right?
Uh-huh.
It's often much easier to change who I think I am than it is to change the situations out there.
Right.
That was the whole point of this assignment.
Yeah.
To recognize that the only thing that holds me back in life, the subtitle of the book is Overcoming Our Self-Imposed Limits to have the life we want. My self-imposed limit says I'm not good enough. I don't have what it takes. Nobody's going to like me. They're not going to hire me.
Right.
So when I ran out of my resources, that's when I had to become resourceful. And honestly, that's when everything started to change.
Okay. Thank you. That's like that's a mastermind. Another breakthrough of the codependency in a different form, incredible.
That's why I wrote this book. It was like one day I was like, oh man, I'm a different person. And it was obviously it took a lot of work and a lot of time, but it's like I'm not the same person. When people read my book or hear me speak or whatever, they say, God, I would have never believed that about you.
Okay.
And even my own family, there's stuff in that book that they didn't know anything about. And they're like, so it's like I have this, I play a good game, I play a good game or what I present really well, but then I had to start living up to that.
Yeah.
And that was, a lot of it was taking responsibility for my life, stopping blaming my mother and everything else, taking my power back. That's why chapter 3, true power and true happiness. We'll talk. We'll get to all of it. It's going to take a year. I'm telling you guys right now, it's going to take the next year to get through the book, but it'll be worth it.
Very good. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Helena. Okay, I'm going to play the song and then we'll come back for our final goodbyes. All right, guys, so that's it for tonight. Thank you so much for being here. Tell your friends, okay? Everybody's welcome. You don't have to have the book, although you probably want to buy the book. But you can have your friends join us, and I'll see you guys next week. All right?
Yes, thank you.
Fabulous.
Good night, Peter. Good night,
Stay
everybody.
healthy.
Thanks, Peter. Thank you.
Good
Thanks,
night, guys.
everybody.
Camilla.
Bye.
Night.
Bye.